everybody's joining. So I'm just going to say welcome because I can't read the names fast enough. So it's nice to see everyone online. I have done a sound check a little bit earlier, so I'm hoping that everybody can hear me nicely and that you can see the presentation. You should already be able to see at least the landing page for the presentation. So I'm going to get started. I want to say welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for making your time available. For us at Omni, it's really important that we build a community, and that's why we call it very much like our open source community. So this is our second session. We run it once a month in the last week of the month. And the reason is we want to create an engaging environment where like-minded individuals can engage and discuss topical issues. So we have topics that we already have made available for the rest of this year and the beginning of next year. However, your feedback and your insight and some of the things that you would like to discuss or engage about, please share that with us. Because it is nice to hear what the community out there wants and how they actually view some of the topical and most important issues. So, oh, sorry, that was a bit fast. So the three key things that we're going to look at today, hi Johan, nice for you to join us too, is we're going to look at strategies for organizational change. We're going to look at massive transformational purpose, and then we're going to look at collaboration. Kubani, I must say hello, nice for you to also join. And just so that we're just clear from a housekeeping point of view, if I can just ask everyone just to make sure that your mics are muted. I'm very happy for us to engage in the chat. So please, I have got curators on the session as well, and we will definitely engage with any questions or comments that you have. If there's a burning thing that takes too long to type, please put your hand up. I will then engage with you and acknowledge you, so then we can have a chat. And yeah, so let's get started. So first of all, when we look at organizational change, and in our previous session, we looked at it from exponential organizations. And when we look at MarTech law or marketing technology law, they talk about the fact that technology changes so rapidly that organizations can't keep up with it. So if you look at what it looks like in the slide, you can see that we actually move in such a way or such a pace as an organization. We operate linearly. Most organizations do that. But technology is changing so fast and at such a rapid rate that we can't keep up. So we talk about the immune system of an organization. We talk about it's a natural human response for us not to be able to keep up with technology because we kick against it. We kick against the change that is happening. So we as organizations adapt things at a much slower rate than what things actually change from a technology point of view. If you just think about cell phones and televisions, I mean, you buy a TV as an example, but your expectation is that that TV will be relevant and be able to be used for at least 5 to 10 years because you're making an investment. However, we all know that that's not the case. If you look at traditional TVs, we want TVs that is Wi-Fi enabled now, as an example. So things have changed, and so do we as organizations. We also need to change. So the gap just widens over time. So we're left with a conundrum or a decision that we need to make. And that is that we need to look at how does it affect the exponential growth? So some of the research that was done, and I just would like to take some time here because this is actually quite important, because if we look at it, of 2,569 companies that Trivia, and I put a link there of who they are, surveyed, 97% responded that COVID-19 has sped up digital transformation. Now, in our previous session, we spoke about digital transformation. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, why is that the case? Why did COVID speed it up? If it was something that we knew that was important, why was there that resistance before and not the buy-in that was supposed to be there? And if we look at it, one of the key things that COVID-19 has broken, and I found when I looked at this and I looked at the research, I thought to myself, very interesting. First one is executive approval. 37% moved because of COVID. We changed like this. We had to. Now South Africa is in the grips of the third wave. It impacts us again. Anybody that is saying that they do not have to engage digital transformation and be agile will be left behind. I don't think it's open for a debate anymore. If we look at just, there's multiple industries represented here tonight. But if we just take the restaurant industry, because I think we all can relate to it, because we all eat, we love food. Well, I don't know about you, but I do. So if we take food, the restaurant industry and the people that work there are hugely impacted with the fact that now they can't have patrons come to them as normal. So it's not necessarily going to change. So how do we pivot? What are some of the things that we might have to look at to do differently and change so that we can survive and we can still have a market as things move forward? One of the other things here was lack of a clear transformational strategy. Very important that COVID forced us to actually sit down and talk about it. Be very clear on what needs to be achieved. And 68% said it sped it up by a great deal. So there's not one industry that has not been affected. Everyone has been affected. And digital transformation is not just about technology. There's so much more, and we're going to actually look at that throughout the session. So what's interesting is that for us to buy into the technology advancement, it's nearly like there must be a cataclysmic event, which the research shows. And in the slides we have, so I'm willing to share the slides with you, and all the research and the sources is there. So if you want to read more about it or delve deeper into it, you are welcome to do so. But it forces us to actually move to rapid adaptation about what needs to be done. And I just put in there like 2020. That's exactly what happened. So if you didn't do the adaptation, and we're now in 2021, things are not going to go back to the way they were. I don't personally believe we can sit here and we can say things are going to be the same. It's not. So we talk about the new normal. And I think most of us are so sick about hearing that word and hearing about COVID. We sort of want to connect and we want to adapt and move forward. And so, okay, so this is with us. So how do we do this thing now? And I think that comes with quite a strong leadership requirement and quite a strong lead towards how do we reinvent ourselves? How do we adapt technology? So I was reflecting around that and specifically because my heart bleeds for the people in the restaurant industry, not just them, but I was reflecting on that industry specifically. And I thought maybe some of the rapid adaptation that can be done is buying into technology with regard to where this is concerned. So why don't deliver food? Yes, but also have cooking classes. So you deliver, you buy online, your ingredients, and then the chefs that is in those restaurants give you an online cooking session with the order. We have to, it's creative, innovative, totally outside of the box, not how things used to be done. And I think one of the key things is when when we look at this is that we've got to look at why does the organizational immune system reject change? Why do we require a catalytic event to adapt to rapid change? Why? Why does it happen? And then why do we aim for calm? But chaos allows movement. And the reason for that is because this was in the previous session, session 1, it's one of the slides from there. It's because the immune system kicks against it. The organizational immune system wants routine, wants the way things work. It's a natural human response. A natural human response is anything foreign we want to reject. We don't necessarily want to engage. And some of the things that I shared in the previous session was some questions that we need to look at, and they are, what is the biggest threat to our organizations right now? How do we build a set of capabilities to harness digital innovation and to create new competitive advantage? And these questions we need to continuously ask. They're not, we can't sit into the day session for argument's sake and go, okay, we've got the answer. It is a continuous process of engagement. It is a continuous question that we need to ask ourselves so that we can get to a point of engaging the immune system, the organization, that will naturally kick against the change. And yes, we can say to ourselves, sometimes there's a lack of resources, sometimes there's not necessarily everything we need to do it, and we don't have the money. That's one of the key aspects that we say is we don't have the money. But to be creative and innovative is not necessarily just about the rands and the cents. It is about how we leverage like-minded people or assets to enable us to achieve what we need to achieve. And that's what we're going to look at in more detail as we move through in the next 45 minutes. We also need to look at how do we push innovation out? So we give it to development and make sure that that actually happens. How do we attract and retain talent? Because that's important. And then the last one is how do we drive and sustain innovation? So these questions, I believe, as leaders, we need to ask ourselves continuously. It's not a once-off. It is something that we need to reflect and look at the whole time. So let's look at some strategies for organizational change. So if we look here, think big and be more disruptive. So a lot of the books and the things that we read, they continuously say, you must think big, you must do things that's disruptive. And it is not always about that. It is about looking at the system and how we follow through, because that's important, and how we actually experiment and have the right people to enable that. But it does mean we actually have to look at our business case and our business plan. We actually have to throw it on its head. And that requires us to look at what are some of the key aspects that make up a business plan. For most of you, you know this. You say key partners, key activities, key resources. This is not new. But what we need to look at is how do we take that business plan and now look at it from an exponential perspective. So how do we overlay this? So if we look at it, when we look at customer segmentation, for argument's sake, we need to look at how we're going to solve problems. So I will send the presentation so then you guys can print it bigger, because I know that sometimes it's not as big on the screen. But we need to look at the entire ethos of why businesses exist, why we are here is to solve problems. There's a need, we solve it. That's why we're there. But for where we are, we need to understand, we need to engage within the ecosystem to solve societal issues. So there's a big shift that it's more about not just shareholder value, but stakeholder value. So how do we shift the organization to start thinking more around the purpose, the bigger purpose, and not just rands and cents? Although rands and cents are still important, because that's how we balance the balance sheets at the end of the day, and that's how we sustain the organization. But that is where the value proposition of who we are as an organization becomes so important. And this is what drives organizational change. So the second one that we look at is your value proposition. So what is the type of offering that we have? So companies digitize their products and services, but are they just creating more up-to-date, or are they actually understanding? Because it's not just about digitizing your traditional offering. It is about actually asking, what is the need out there? What is the value proposition? And what is the shift? Because the agility is so important. We have to be more agile with regard to what the market out there needs. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's the flexibility around that. The third one is customer relationships. We're going to look at it a little bit later around the massive transformational purpose. And we have to remember, as human beings, we're relational. That's why lockdown and not being able to socially engage with each other is so difficult. It's really difficult for human beings because we need the social connection and the social cohesion. However, so are businesses. Businesses are built on relationships. You sell linear, you are losing customers these days. They want to know, except for the value that you can add, don't force a product on me because I want a relationship. So relationship sales, if you look at any of the research coming out at the moment, it is the one people want. If you look at the car manufacturing companies or industry, they give you loyalty points because you have purchased the same type of branded car. So whichever Kia, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Mitsubishi, whichever, because they want what? They want loyalty. They want that engagement. They want that relationship with you because they want you to be a fan. Because you sell on their behalf. Every time you go on the road and you're driving your car, you're selling it. They want a community. They want that engagement. And then channels, more digital touch points, more integrated. And there's continuous ways to engage. And I think that the multi-channel aspect with regard to customer engagement becomes so important. That's social channels. We can no longer say that we don't want to be on socials. We can't. There's just no ways. That is how people communicate, and that is how we actually start engaging. Then number 5, we look at key activities, and there's 2 components there. It's the scalable processes. So how quick can we scale? How quickly can we move up? And how we can leverage, or how are we lean within that process? And just now when we look at some of the aspects within a massive transformational purpose, which is a key component of exponential organizations, is we actually need to think about how do we level up around the lean approach that we have. We've got to leverage the communities and the workforce in such a way, but we've got to be able to do it quickly with less. And I think that's become quite a big reality. And then if we look at 7 and 8, which is key resources, we look at algorithms. It's key. It helps us make decisive decisions, and that also ties in that we're going to look at in a moment. And then a network culture. We are connected. So we have a hierarchical system within an organization. There's still a place for that. However, we need to understand that we need to work in a networked culture within that organization. So that is what we would term matrix structures in companies. Being able to work in project teams, being able to have tests and your minimum viable products. Who's part of that test team? And that then ties back into your lean type of startup culture that we sort of need to adapt. And then the last one is your key partners. How do we leverage partners in our environment? So this, to build a business case and to look at organizational change, it's still the key components, but the way in which we look at the key components have to change and have to evolve. Because as we move forward, we are looking at what is a massive transformational purpose. So what are we doing? So how do we get started? So I just quickly want to look at these. We have to look at technology and talent. It's a combination of the two. It is not isolated. We need talent. We need the right talent. We need to hone the right talent, but in the same breath, we also need the right technology. And that takes time because there is a lot of technology out there, and to buy the right technology for what we need, but that can scale, that can become a partner with us, that is very important. Because if you are engaging in technology that has to continuously change, or you need to find new technology partners the whole time, that's a very costly exercise and a costly engagement for a business. And specifically for businesses, that's very technology driven. So let's quickly have a look at what is an MTP. What is Massive Transformational Purpose? It is the higher aspirational purpose of the organization, capturing the hearts and the minds. It's that passion. It's where people naturally see what you want to achieve and where you see yourself going, and it's the bigger change that you would like to make. So it's massive. It's transformative. It can cause significant transformation to a community or the planet. I mean, you can look at Google organizing the knowledge of the world and the information of the world. And purpose, it has got a very clear why. It's very, very clear on what they actually want to achieve. And if we look at what it is and what it is not, so first of all, MT is more emotional. It reaches the hearts and minds. It's not just about the mission and vision of an organization anymore. It's credible. Stakeholders need to be confident in their daily work and activity. It is simple, it's clear, easy to understand. It replaces mission statements. It enhances the brand. It guides people. People know exactly towards where they are going and organize. And then it's transformative, which means it has got a purpose. It's beyond just the shareholder value. It's the entire community. It makes a difference to the planet. And there is big organizations that work on this. And if we look at it, is aspirational, and it is creating a different future. So what is that? What are we wanting to do, and how do we want to engage to have a different future? So if we look at it, and I just want to share, this is in my notes and it's not on the slide. When we look at MTPs, there's 6 key, they call it the 6 Ds. So we look at it as digitized, it's deceptive. So meaning experts normally tell us we can't. Being deceptive within an MTP means people haven't done it. So I know not maybe everyone is fans of Elon Musk's, but let's be clear. Experts will tell him, no, you can't go to Mars, but he is doing everything in his power to make sure that that is what he can do. So it's very disruptive. It is not out there. It's not something that has been done before. It dematerializes things. In other words, gone are the 5-year plans. We need to be agile. The 5-year plans is not necessarily serving us from an organizational development and organizational structure point of view at all. We need to be agile. So what are we doing? Can't have a business plan or organizational layout that is 5 years in advance. We couldn't plan for COVID. So if you had a 5-year plan, look how you were disruptive. So our plans need to be agile enough and fluid enough to allow us to adjust and move. And then it's demonetized. It looks at not necessarily cost. And we're going to look at that in a moment. And it's democratized, meaning trust is a cornerstone component of being able to do MTPs. We have to trust our employees. They have to work in a autonomous way. We have to trust our partners. And we don't want just suppliers anymore. We actually want people that partner with us. So how do we go about those partner relationships? So be clear on the why, be clear on the how we're going to do about it, and what will be the actual global impact. So, sorry, I just went back. So let's have a look at the MTP. So for the next 10 to 15 minutes, I want to just unpack. So we have a massive transformational purpose. So that's the aspirational, the bigger impact what we want to make. But there's a practical component when we look at organizational change and how to actually embrace this and how to do this. So in the book Exponential Organization, Salem Ishmael and his team talk about ideas and scale. So engaging the right brain and the left brain. So if we look at it, the left brain is more order, control and stability, and the right brain is creativity, growth and uncertainty. And they talk about what are these aspects that we need to do to engage to get to an MTP, to be agile enough to deal with the fact that technology is at such a slant and curve from a development point of view. However, organizational is more lateral. We still talk about a 10%. Let's do 10% per annum growth. That's gone. We can't think like that anymore. We need to think about there needs to be sustained growth, sure, but how do we deal with the individual in the garage we are not aware of that's going to be disruptive to our market? We just look at Airbnb for argument's sake. Was hugely disruptive to the hotel industry. They don't own one physical hotel or asset, but they are the biggest hotel chain in the world. So we need to consider some of those aspects and how do we build it. Now, for each of us, from different industries and different perspectives, it would be different. However, if we look at it, so let's start with interfaces. So interfaces is as simple as making complex simple. Make it easier for people. And that is where the creativity from our teams are required to make sure that we create an end user experience that is about the end user and not us. So when we design stuff and when we look at it from a technology point of view, we've actually got to look at interfaces very much from a visual perspective, but we've also got to look at who's interacting with the system. Is it simple? Is it easy to understand? I don't know about you guys, and maybe I can just get some comments, but when you are busy with, let's take online shopping quickly, because we all had to engage in some way or form potentially with online shopping. If it is complex or difficult, or they ask you too many things, or you've got to triple click and double click and then do you actually engage with it? You can just say yes, no, thumbs up, or do you actually, yes, you actually abandoned, you're quite right. You just say enough, because why? The consideration has not been the end user. The consideration has been potentially what is the best way for the DC to deal with the creating a cart from their perspective, not necessarily looking at your cart and what you need from an end user point of view. So if we then look at dashboards, which is the next component of optimizing the environment. Yes, Brendan, we don't have time for too many questions. There shouldn't be barriers to entry. We should be expediting engagement. And if we look at dashboards internally gives us information real time. One of the biggest challenges is data. We're in an industry of big data. Some of you come from the contact center industry tonight, which in my opinion is one of the highest monitored environments that we work in across industries, because the BPO sector is not one sector, it actually sits in multiple sectors. But it is highly monitored. Our social media is highly monitored, but it's a lot of information. great, you can have information, but if information is not packaged in a way that leaders can make informed decisions, then the information is worthless. That's why dashboards are important. Dashboards is for real-time information. So what are we doing? How are we packaging it? And it must be innovative. I'm not talking about just about the data as we know it. It is about honing information from an expediting that big data, that information. That is why the World Economic Forum has said that business intelligence and business analytics and business architecture for data is a critical skill. It's a need that we have to hone. And there's a lot of ways to present information that helps people make decisions more effectively. But we need to engage our teams to understand what information they need to make decisions. And it also needs to be fluid. Can we change it? Can it evolve? Can we customize it? Those are all elements that we actually need. Then experimentation. We spoke about it in our first session. It is so important that there's psychological safety within an organization. Are we allowing space for people to learn through making mistakes so that it's okay to experiment? We are part of creating a culture. Leaders are part of creating a culture. So failure leads to success. Nobody achieved success without failure. Unless some of you have. So please share with me. Is there anybody that has achieved success the first time? No, we make mistakes. And it is, yes, Brendan, we have to fail forward. And that's exactly what this is. We need to have a lean startup culture and we need to do customer development, but it needs to be okay to experiment because it is so important for that experimentation to take place so that we can be more agile and actually be more disruptive within the environment. Then also the next one is autonomy. Are we allowing our people to work independently? Can they self-organize? We don't have to micromanage. Exponential organizations or organizations that adapt to change fast and rapidly does not micromanage. They paint the picture, they explain the why, and they allow a team to go to autonomously organize themselves to experiment to get the job done. Because our job is to make sure that we've engaged the objectives and key results. The OKR, because that's leadership's job. Leadership job is the objective being met, but allow people to actually engage in getting the job done, but in creative and innovative ways, in ways we might not have thought of. Because else what we're engaging is we're engaging the immune system again. We're saying, oh no, but we don't do it like that here. And yes, I'm fully aware that in some instances there is compliance and risk. So compliance doesn't allow us to do certain things in certain ways. But if we are testing, we're allowing people to go and test something, but they can come up with creative ways of how to weave compliance and risk into those aspects. But autonomy becomes really important. We need people to think more independently, because if we're going to look just now on the other side, it is so important to understand, because our staff on demand and community and crowd requires independence, not control. And then the last one is social technology. I don't want to spend too much time here, but obviously we have communication channels. I mean, if we just think about this session today, through Instagram and LinkedIn, the amount of engagements that we have had about the session, and not everybody is on today and not able to attend the session, but they will continuously engage, because why? We're building something. So our social technology is allowing us to engage people that and get access to markets that we haven't before. It also gives us access to information, more information than what we ever would have received before. But that comes back to dashboards and data, because we need to hone the information. So there's plenty of tools available, but we've got to customize it for what our needs are and how we would like to work with it. And what's interesting is they use Airbnb as an example again, and they talk here, which allows travelers and owners to engage with each other directly, which is autonomy again, because Airbnb is not controlling how the owner of the house is engaging with potential patrons. Because there's trust, because it's a collaborative partner, and there's a social rating system linked to it. So they trust that which they've built. So now we're going to move on to the right side. So we're going to look at the more creative growth, uncertainty. I want to just see in the chat if there's any questions. Yes, Alison says innovative feedback sessions is very, very important. And that's true. We've got to create an environment where we communicate and we get information from each other. And if we look at staff on demand, that is where we look at the working place that will become a nucleus of a small, like I call it like stealth mode, permanent workforce. And everybody else around that is going to be people that are your experts in your community that you bring in based on your requirements from a business perspective. And your stealth team is going to be creative, diverse, being able to do nearly multiple things, work on matrix structures and matrix teams. And we need to, we talk about creating entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial minded individuals. We talk about the educational system and that our economy is so needing of more entrepreneurs. Those are some of the stuff that we speak about. Some of the research which I will share later on my on LinkedIn next week around just creating entrepreneurship and the kids that not necessarily getting access to formal working environments. How do we engage them and how do we get there is by creating the pre-qualified workers that will become part of the staff on demand model. But here's the thing, it's not traditional employment models. So how do we help people to understand how to run their own little business? Like I'm a brand. So if I'm part of the staff on demand pool and I work for 5 organizations, for argument's sake, do I have the skill to do proper time management planning for those 5 people? Do I have the skill to brand myself and market myself? Do I understand how pricing works? And can I generate your gross profit and net profit for myself? Because those are some of the thought processes that we need to help young people shift with, because now there's this lack of permanent employment opportunities. But yes, the gig economy is available. I can sit in South Africa and work for a company overseas, but how am I getting my skills there? So it's a whole shift. And I think it's also a shift for us as organizations to manage, because leadership around staff on demand models is very different. You do not have the luxury of influencing a culture and a behavior by walking around, for argument's sake. So how do we do it? How do we look at it differently? Sorry, the next one is community and crowd. How do we actually engage the community and the crowd? So it allows us to lower cost and decrease our risk. And communities are made up of large global groups of individuals that is passionate about what you are passionate about what you want to achieve. So we just now I'm going to talk about the collaboration, and this is actually what it is about. How do we start working with other companies? We don't have to control everything. Not a need. We don't have to have big office buildings anymore. It's shifting, it's changing. Maybe we have a hybrid office space, but more than one organization might be in it. Maybe not competitors, but people that can complement each other. And we're going to look at that in a moment. And then the last one is crowd is an even larger pool, but they engage with you as they want to. But your community is connected to you. They want to be with you. They buy in. But a crowd is just people that they've read something or they see something. So they're not necessarily permanent. And it's more a passive interest that they have in you as an organization. And then we look at algorithms to automate what people do. I'm a very firm believer of please can it be done electronically? If somebody needs to type it, does it have to be? Or can we move a manual process to an automated process? And I think that becomes so important, because I would much rather for linear processes use system and technology, and for my more complex processes use my talent, my people, because they have skill that no computer system will ever have, which is creative thinking, which is innovation, which is the ability to do complex problem solving outside of what algorithms and routine-based aspect does. And yes, systems are clever, that you can learn, because there's machine learning. They learn as they do. But human beings are far more capable of learning and embracing that complexity than we actually give credit to. And then leveraging assets is the second last one I want to have a look at for this, and that is where if we talk about on-demand resources from a human capital point of view, the need to buy assets, and some of you come from the financial industry, and I know, like Johan specifically, it's the balance sheet, and it helps the balance sheet if we have assets. But here's the thing. If we look at what the cost of a tractor is, for argument's sake, and I'm just sucking figures here at the moment, but if it's a 2 million rand capital layout that you either buy in cash, so your cash flow gets affected, or if you are making a loan, so you're financing it, but only you are using it. And in a lot of ways, leveraging assets means that an asset company and you rent it for when you need it, or you utilize it for when you need it. Very similar to Uber. Uber doesn't own the cars, the individuals do. So they don't have the assets. And I think that is very important. That's very different to how we've used to do stuff. And again, do we see how control is being affected in the way that we're thinking differently about organizational structures and how organizations need to be set up? So from a strategic point of view, from sitting around the boardroom table, the question needs to be, do we need it? Do we need to make the capital decision to have that? What is the existential benefit that we are getting from it over and above having an asset on a balance sheet? Is it necessary? Does it allow us to be agile, to move quick? Not necessarily. A community, so somebody that becomes part of my partnership that allows me to gain that on-demand asset might be better. But the ecosystem still wants ownership. From an organizational point of view, we still kick against that. And then the last one is engagement. It is crucial for exponential organizations and people that want to engage with making a massive transformational purpose happen, is to engage. And I think that is also why I'm very grateful for yourselves to want to be part of the community, want to engage. and want to talk. It's not just about Omni or me speaking. It's about hearing what you guys also have to say. Yes, we go and do the research. Yes, we may be creating a platform or a structure, but it's not just about us. It is truly about the community because we want to engage. As we engage, we become better. And we hope through that platform or an engagement that we have, we are helping each other to actually become better, because that is where we committed to a shared purpose, wanting to make a difference. We might be driving it from a different perspective, but ultimately, you wouldn't be here if you weren't inquisitive enough around what is a massive transformational purpose, or how can I contribute, or how can I become part of a community that is moving towards something transformative. And that is what this is about. It uses the system, it uses loyalty and gamification and all of that. So how do we create that environment? And for us, I mean, we see it where you have companies that have loyalty programs. But for us, it's about value. How do we add value? How do we give back through our engagements? And I think it is very important that we do ask ourselves the question, is how do we engage everybody in the ecosystem? So here, the engagement conversation that we're having here is one level within our community. But we also have learners, for argument's sake, that requires a very different type of engagement than what this is. And yeah, that brings me to the end of what the MTP is. And I personally believe in accessing the right and the left brain. For me and for us in Omni, these are non-negotiables. We're not perfect at it, definitely not. We are continuously engaging in this within this space of our digital transformation strategy or organizational strategy, because digital transformation sits within the organizational strategy. But for us, it's about how do we engage all of this? How do we critically analyze all of the components within the left and the right brain? And are the strategies a requirement to do business in the now? And part of my reflection has been, we cannot afford not to. We can't. Because a typical business plan with a typical 5-year plan is not going to serve us anymore. So one of our pillars is being disruptive in education locally with a global reach. So saying that is one thing, doing that is a different thing. So what do we need to do? And I'm doing some introspection while I'm talking to you. What do we need to do differently to be able to achieve that? And that actually does mean we engaging both sides. It's not just one. There's not one strategy that can be deployed. And I must say, it has been amazing to see how some of the strategies have just rolled out. And it's not because we're perfect. It's very, very much by grace that we've been able to engage certain of the strategies that we have. But it does mean that we've looked at things differently. And the last thing that I want to look at is collaboration. So build uncommon relationships. This was so nice for me when I started to do the research. It was different types of organizations from different industries that work together for the benefit of an integrated value. And I love this. And there's familiar faces on the session here today, and they are part of this. They don't do what we do, but they're part of our uncommon relationships because they actually believe in the transformational purpose that we want to achieve. And they become part of our collaborative actual ecosystem that we are trying to build. And that is, when we start building uncommon relationships, we build communities. One of the other pillars in Omni is making a significant difference in the communities we serve. And for me, it is it is so amazing to be able to see how these communities are unfolding. And it is collaborative partnerships. Who are they? What are they? People will find you, and you don't have to find people. And that is so true, because what happens is in sales, they actually say, you know, if you actually deliver really well and you do what the customer expects, and it's good quality and it's a good product, the customer talks about you, right? Don't they? They sell you. So for me, that's what this starts doing, is like the uncommon relationships, the collaboration. We start talking about each other, and there's this mutuality in this relationship that evolves, that then gets us to this massive transformational purpose. It is not a one-sided approach at all. And then people will join for the ideas, but stay for the emotion. So I think it is the passion to which and the way we make people feel that makes them want to stay within a uncommon or collaborative relationship, because it is ultimately about the MTP. It is ultimately about what we want to achieve and where we see ourselves for both parties. So if there's two collaborative partners, two uncommon relationships, it's about both. It's about the mutuality in that relationship. And then, so how do we go about building it? And then how are we creating uncommon relationships is the two questions I want to leave you with, because I want to ask you as the audience. We have got 7 minutes to wrap this up. And I want to ask, so how would you go about building it? Knowing what you know about creating exponential organizations, knowing what you know about engaging the left and the right brain, but knowing that the only way that we can achieve it is through collaboration, through engagement. So you can type, you can engage your mic if you want to, but how would you go about building uncommon relationships? Who do you see as an uncommon relationship? Or maybe I must use an example, so maybe that might be a good thing. So Yuan, you got your camera on, so I'm going to use you. So it's, in training, we call it pose, pause, pounce, but I'm also going to pounce directly. So I'm going to use Yuan as an example. So he works within the financial sector, and he operates as a, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, from an accounting is his focus, but more from an auditing and an advice, and definitely from a business structure, shareholding perspective, broad-based black economic empowerment deals. So he operates at quite a high level where that is concerned. Not in education at all, but he's an uncommon partner for us. So that's how I feel about our relationship with Johan. It allows us to sometimes, when we deal with very complex things, to have an engagement with him, so we think about things differently. So I don't know, how do you feel about us in the same way? I don't know. But for us, that is definitely an uncommon relationship. We are not homogeneous. It's not the same.
Yeah, no, definitely, Lize. I think it's you know, to create those relationships is very important. You know, I think you know, you mentioned that. Listen, if you can connect with a person, and you know that, and you can provide them with you know, the advice that's relevant and advice that makes sense, and it's sensible, it's practical, and you can implement it, and you still have that relationship and that connection, then you know, I think that is one way of building new relationships. But you know, it's an interesting one to how do you scale that, you know, what and how do you scale a consulting environment or an accounting environment where, you know, a lot of the relationships gets built with with an individual. But yes, it's definitely an uncommon relationship.
Anyone else? Christelle, I'm going to read your message. So Christelle said, I apply all my faculties. Yes, emotional thinking and daily experience to open to uncommon relationships. Very nice. I always remember anyone can teach me something. So true. It's actually an emotive thing, and it actually is a mindset. Christelle, we have to have a mindset towards that. Lindy, we start with identifying gaps where we are lacking, then engage with people with those strengths. So true. And I think it's that evaluation that we continuously need to do. And it's creating a hybrid space of learning from each other. I've also been in a very fortunate position as some of the partners that we've been engaging with works in totally different. So one is in sports management that has got nothing to do with us, but the overlapping, the passion that we have is within sports, professional sports, to make a concerted effort with regard to making sure that education doesn't get lost just because we're playing professional sport. So that also created an uncommon relationship and an uncommon engagement, which is so important. Is there any other comments before I start wrapping up the session, because we've got 2 minutes left? Any questions?
Hi, Lize. So this is Shiv. Hi, this is Shiv. I belong to an organization called WNS.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, and we are one of the largest BPM organizations. So I just wanted to say a few words. It's great to be part of this forum. It's my first session, and thanks for inviting me. And
Welcome.
it's a great pleasure. No, I just wanted to say with respect to uncommon relationships from an organization perspective. So what we have been doing is one is engaging so we are engaging basically from a CSR activity. We go to different schools. So we are in the space where we do back end processing for finance, accounting, payroll, HR, and so on and so forth, right? So then what we want to do is we want to give back, engage with the schools, try and see how we can kind of uplift the community there with respect to the students. Then we also do a lot of things with respect to learnerships. Yeah, and then we kind of taken people, train them, bring them on board, show them how the organization works, train them completely. I think those are two relationships which I feel is very important, because one is the upliftment of the community, and two is also looking at certain nuances for the organization as such. So that's my view, Lizzie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I so agree with you. It's Natasha a little bit earlier said in her comment. Sorry, I just want to scroll back up because you guys are typing faster than what I can read. So she also said is like, who should we not be in an uncommon relationship with? And that's so true. We have to actually be open to engagement and looking at stuff in a creative way and giving back. And Shiv, you are so right. From a corporate point of view, we need to engage. We need to look at making that bigger difference. But also, when we're looking at our massive transformational purpose from an organizational development and organizational change point of view, we should be okay to work with partners that is different to us. It's like if you take Mercedes and one of the biggest drone companies, I have got it here somewhere, and from a research point of view, they partnered. Make no sense why there should be a partnership between them, but that's exactly what the mindset change that we actually need to have is that it's the uncommon relationships that sometimes is going to unlock certain new strategies and innovations that we have not thought about before, and looking at things from a different perspective. So we are unfortunately at the point where it is now 5 o'clock. So I want to say thank you so much. Thank you for making yourselves available. Thank you for being here. I didn't respond to all the aspects in the chat. However, I will have a look at it and afterwards also engage and make some comments. But thank you so much for being engaging, for being present, for being part of the sessions. Just so that, you know, we have the next two sessions. The one is on the 28th of July and the next one is on the 25th of August. The one is going to look at organizational change specifically, and the next one is going to look at individual change, because there's a difference between the two. So yeah, if you've got any questions or concerns, please give us a shout. Otherwise, we'd love to see you online again in the other sessions. And yeah, share with us. Go into the chat on LinkedIn to say if there's anything specific that you would like to see. If you want to be part of an engagement or topic, we're even open to that. That is the whole intent. That is why it's called open source. It is to engage and it's to give back. It's to provide information, discussion, topical issues, and we don't have to do it by ourselves. We're very comfortable to coordinate it, but be part of our uncommon relationships. So we look forward to it. Thank you so much for your time, and have a blessed evening and a good week. Thank you.